Hi, you're watching theAnalysis-news, and I'm your host, Talia Baroncelli. This is part 2 of my discussion with Walid Habbas, where we get into the conditions on the ground in Gaza, as well as the legitimacy of the Palestinian Authority. If you enjoy this content, you can give us a boost and support us by going to our website, theAnalysis.news, and hitting the donate button at the top right corner of the screen. Like and subscribe to the show wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, be it on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, and make sure you're on our mailing list. That way you're always up to date every time a new episode drops. See you in a bit with Walid. Joining me now is Walid Habbas. He is a researcher at the Palestinian Forum for Israeli Studies, and he's also a PhD candidate. He just submitted his PhD thesis at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where he's been studying various economic relations between Israel and the West Bank, as well as the dynamics of oppression and occupation. So I'm really excited to have you with me today, Walid.
Hi, Talia.
Well, several aid organizations have reported on starvation in Gaza, and they've said that Israel is using starvation as a tool of war. And several hospitals have said that they've seen children die as a result of starvation. So not just from being bombarded or from being shot at by the Israelis, but as a result of the mass starvation and malnutrition that has unfortunately taken hold of Gaza right now. And of course, as a humanitarian catastrophe, the civilian infrastructure has completely broken down, and there's no possibility of redistributing some of the aid that's coming in. And of course, Israel is controlling the aid trucks that are coming into Gaza, and not enough trucks are coming in through the Rafah crossing, as you mentioned, but also into the north via the Kerem Shalom crossing in the north of Gaza. One other thing that's happened is that they've also targeted the civilian policemen on the ground who were in charge of sort of distributing the aid. So there's a breakdown of public governance. And we recently saw a horrifying incident in which 112 Palestinians were killed trying to get flour, what's being called the flour massacre. And, you know, the Israelis have a completely different account of what happened. They're saying that most of these people died from being trampled, and that they were not the ones who killed all of those people. Of course, people on the ground are saying something completely different. They're saying that the Israeli forces actually shot at them. And the BBC has recently said that they analyzed the footage, and that the footage that was released was not one unedited piece, that it was, 4 sections that have been released. So it's possible that that footage has been edited by the Israelis. So we don't have the full account as to what happened, but obviously the people on the ground are saying that they were targeted directly by the Israelis. But in any case, it's clear that people are starving. There's basically a famine that's underway, and it's the Israelis who are controlling the aid that's coming in and have suspended funds to UNRWA as well.
Yes, of course. So it is Israel that controls all the entrances to Gaza, all the borders, and prevents the aid from coming inside Gaza. But there is also another important issue related to this thing, which is Israel is focusing on who is going to distribute this aid. So making to drop food from the air would not solve the issue. It would complicate it more, because the idea here is to whether to enable large numbers of trucks full with aids to enter Gaza. The question here, who controls these trucks and distribute them on the population? It is, of course, the responsibility and the right of the local government, which is Hamas. It is not a question of allying with Hamas politically or not, but it is the government that governs Gaza. It is the one responsible for distributing this aid. And Israel want to cut this relation between Hamas as an administrative authority and the population, and make this cause make this chasm between the population and the authority in order to isolate Hamas on the one hand and to give rise to other collaborator parties from within the population to collaborate with Israel and to constitute an alternative party to talk to Israel so as to replace Hamas. So this is the main issue when we talk about the famine and the humanitarian aid and the food. It is a question of who distribute them, the main question. Dropping food from the air would complicate the issue and would, of course, ally with the Israeli agenda. Because when you drop food from the air, you can neglect the issue of who collect and distributes, because you distribute it, and the places that you drop the food were not selected randomly. They were selected by the air forces that dropped the food from the air very carefully in order to prevent from the authority on the ground, which is Hamas, to take advantage from this humanitarian aid, and on the other hand, to give the people, okay, so we should look more closely about how this airdropping is being done. So going back to the humanitarian issue in Gaza, Israel, unfortunately, is unsuccessful in defeating the military opposition and Hamas. This is, of course, fortunate, but unfortunately, it is succeeding, Israel, in re-engineering the space in Gaza. So recently, Israel started to cut Gaza into two parts. The upper 1/3, which goes, if you are familiar with the map, which goes on the route, which is called the Netzarim cross, which goes somewhere near the industrial area, which is in the Gaza industrial area, through the cutting the whole Gaza Strip, arriving to the Gaza port. So this would make the city of Gaza cut and isolated from the other part, the southern part of Gaza. This was established by a very huge, wide highway called Highway 749. Israeli military built tens of factories there to produce stones and to produce cement in order to pave this road. And this road should be a benchmark where military bases, Israeli military bases, can spread around this road and make, direct and swift invasions here or there inside the Gaza Strip, but also to prevent the Gazian from returning to their homes. This way, Israel is hoping to make two versions within the Gaza Strip. The northern version, where it wishes to clean it up from Hamas and then to give rise to collaborators from within the clans that were left in the northern part of Gaza, and provide for the international community a new version, which is not hostile to Israel, which Israel would collaborate and give more humanitarian aids, more money, allow them to reconstruct the northern part. And the other southern part would be another example where if the Fidaiyin or if the opposition exists, then the population would gain nothing and would remain living in ruins. So this is the plan Israel is engineering now, and unfortunately, it has proceeded well in doing this.
Yeah, you're speaking about what Netanyahu has in mind for the day after, because it seems like, at least based on what you're saying, that they're trying to create a power vacuum in order to destroy the governing structures of Hamas on the ground and to selectively give aid to certain people, but not to everyone. And the U.S. airdrops, for example, I think, one airdrop is basically less than 25% of what a truck could actually bring in. So it's just very, very, very small amounts of aid that are not getting the entire population. But if the goal is to try to make people distrust Hamas and to be fed up with them in order to turn to another governing authority, would you say that it would be more effective for the Israelis to perhaps live up to their promise of saying that they'll keep civilians safe and maybe to evacuate them to safety into Israel for a time being?
Of course, no. Also, when we talk about the after plan, we should not learn only about this plan from what Netanyahu wrote in a page and a half only. We can also look at what is happening on the land and analyze, everything conducted day after day. And also, when we talk about Israeli and protecting the civilians, we can leave away the rhetorics used by Israel aside, and we look about the history. Israel is an aggressive state. It is a colonial state. Israel don't mind to kill and eliminate all the Palestinians all at once. Of course, it cannot do this all of a sudden, but this war repeated what we witnessed in the Nakba and onwards, that tens and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were killed from the Israeli troops. So, and Israeli military soldiers always rape Palestinian women, kill children, make a massive destruction of the urban scene, of the urban landscape. The genocide is not about how many casualties fell or how many shaheed are in Gaza. Genocide is the act of destructing a nation, and by preventing Palestinians from at least developing their economy, from developing their hospitals, this is considered a genocide. Israel bombarded a lab where I don't know how do you call it in English, where spears, men put spears in order to make babies because they are unable. What do you call this?
Like a sperm bank, basically.
Yes, it's not a bank; it's a laboratory where they put this with that in order to make babies.
Yeah, in vitro fertilization.
Israel destroyed all these labs in Gaza, and in this way, it prevented new babies. So preventing in the new birth of a new society, to prevent the society from a natural growth. This is considered also genocide. Of course, we can add to that more than 30,000 people killed, the huge the destruction of Gaza. All of this is a genocide. We need not stay on the level of to prove whether Israel is hostile or not. No, it is the most aggressive state, and its army is the most unethical army in the world. This is not like something that we threw. This is what the history taught us during 78 years.
And at the beginning of the interview, you also said that, this is a different Israel, that the Israel of, 1967 was kind of following some international agreements and international law. And now the current Israeli government is so fanatical and,
Yes,
even refers to, or at least parts of the government, parts of the coalition government refer to the West Bank as, Judea and Samaria, and they use these biblical terms and have complete disregard for international law. They want to continue building settlements in order to annex more of West Bank, of
I can give
Palestinian
you
land.
one example for that. in 2019, U.S. Secretary Pompeo said suddenly that the United States no longer consider the settlements an illegal project. And why is that? He added, because we believe in the Israeli courts and the Israeli Supreme Court. If Israel wants to confiscate land in the West Bank, it makes this very, in a transparent way. It make an announcement, allows the Palestinians to appeal to the court. It defends the rights of self property of the Palestinians. This is something very modern, very democratic, and that's why whenever Israel confiscates land, we believe that it was confiscated not against any Palestinian individual right. Okay, so this reflects that the previous Israel, he's talking about the Bagatz in Hebrew, which is the Israel Supreme Court, which has a long history in mixing between the occupation and expansion appetite and between the international law in order to orchestrate all this settler colonial project in a way that is digestive for the international community. And it is doing that very slowly in order to take all these concepts. But now Israel is changing, and this Ashkenazi secular elite is moving away and is being replaced by very extreme religious biblic fractions. And these fractions do not respect the international law. They okay. For instance, Netanyahu wanted to replace this position of the Israeli Supreme Court and produce another system of governance as Israel, where the executive authority has always the upper hand. And this way he would be able to confiscate as much as he wants lands from the West Bank, regardless the international law, regardless the Palestinian individual rights in ownership of the land, etc., because it is a public land, it is Eretz Israel, it's promised by God, it is not subject to courts or international law. This type of Israel, and when we move to Gaza also, they want to, eliminate as much as they can from the babies, from the children, from the women, from anyone. Okay, they want to destruct, they want to transfer Palestinians. Okay, most of the appeal that was presented by South Africa to the international court, if you read it, you will be shocked from the number of citations from the tongues of Israeli ministers, high-ranked officers about genocide. They want to eliminate physically. I'm talking about physically. They want to eliminate the Palestinian as a nation, the Palestinian population. They're not talking about Hamas or military resistance. They're talking about the Palestinians as a nation. So this is the new Israel that we talk about now. Of course, from a Palestinian point of view, it's not different from the Palestinian from Israel that conducted the Nakba and the Naksa in 1948 and 1967. But I'm talking also about a new type of relationship emerging between this monster, which is called Israel, and the Palestinians, in a way that nobody can, no party in the international community can protect the Palestinians or can dare and stop the Israeli appetite in eliminating the Palestinians. This is the new Israel that we're talking about.
Yeah, this new Israel, as you said, Netanyahu orchestrated a judicial overhaul, and we did see, large protests in Israel in opposition to this is that definitely affects the role of the executive and how they're able to then overrule certain Supreme Court rulings. But why don't we turn to what the Oslo Accord set up, which is the Palestinian Authority? Because Netanyahu has boasted that he's always been dedicated to preventing the emergence of a two-state solution. He's, gung-ho about ensuring that Oslo will basically be dismantled, that the legacy of Oslo will be dismantled. And last week we saw Prime Minister Shtayyeh from Fatah, from the Palestinian Authority, resign. He was, I guess, a close right-hand man to Mahmoud Abbas, to the president of the PA. How do you see this resignation changing anything? Do you think there will be, drastic changes? I mean, Mahmoud Abbas did say that he might appoint a World Bank economist, one of his other friends, I guess. But how legitimate is the PA? I mean, are they really a legitimate actor at this point?
So if we go back to Oslo Accords, we would not find any reference to the establishment of a Palestinian state in the Oslo Accords. And the Oslo Accords, I mean all the accords, agreements, and letters exchanged and memorandums signed between 1993 and 2000, up to Camp David summit that failed between Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak, previous to the Arab breakout of the Second Palestinian Intifada. So there's no mention to Palestinian state or two-state solution in the Oslo Accords. And the idea that Oslo would eventually lead to the establishment of a Palestinian state is a joke, because Oslo was put in order to establish an autonomy, a Palestinian Authority, which is it is called in the Oslo agreements a council, to administrate the social lives of Palestinians in specific enclaves within the occupied territories. These enclaves in the West Bank constitute only 40%, and in Gaza Strip, after the withdrawal of the Israeli settlements and military from Gaza in 2006, 2005, 2006, all Gaza Strip became under the administration of this autonomy authority. So I'm not sure how to address the issue of Shtayyeh now, but I can say that currently there are two forces within the Palestinian political landscape. There is the resistance camp, and there is the Oslo camp. And these are two contradictory camps that cannot by any way, they cannot combine together or make any reconciliation between, never. And I should explain why. Because the Oslo camp is being funded and is being established, and its legitimacy is being given from Israel. And so it doesn't has the autonomy of making its own decisions. Whereas the other camp, the resistance camp, is against Israel and wants, to free the lands, whatever. Okay. So these are two opposite camps. And I don't imagine that they can come together to form one single council altogether. So, and by the way, both camps do not represent all the Palestinians, okay? But these are the salient camps, the vocal camps within the Palestinian political landscape. So this is the issue here. Shtay and the majority of the PLO is captured by the United States and the Israelis, and Israel intervene in everything happens inside the PLO, whether we like to hear this thing or we don't like. But the PLO now is an entity that entirely collaborates with Israel and cannot raise its voice against Israel, even when Israel is conducting genocide against the Palestinian people, which the PO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, should be the sole representative of these Palestinians. It is inactive entity, but unfortunately, it is recognized by the international community as the sole and legitimate representative, and no wonder why the international community sticks with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and of course the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, etc. Okay, these are strong people on the ground. These are good friends to Israel, and so no wonder the international community recognizes the PLO as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinians. So as long as this representative of the Palestinians is dominated by the PLO and by Fatah, of course, I don't think a reconciliation with Hamas could occur at any time.
But you separate these two Palestinian elite within the political landscape as, the resistance and Palestinian Authority. But do you see either one of those as being more positioned to secure the rights of the Palestinians, or would you say neither of them?
Well, this is a political question, and I would not like to answer it because I don't want to be affiliated with one party or another. But I am describing what is currently happening in the Palestinian political scene. There are two parties. One is collaborating with Israel, entirely collaborating, and the other is resisting Israel. Okay? So these are two different opposite agendas. They are being funded from different and opposing international or regional bodies, and there is no way that they can reconcile or they can meet together. Okay, but who is really capable of really defending the Palestinian rights, and who is the good guy and who is the bad guy? This is a political question, and I think one should refer to surveys and to learn what Palestinians think about that. And when I talk about Palestinians, I talk about 12 million Palestinians because we have also 6 million refugees outside West Bank and Gaza Strip. And these people also have a stake in this issue.
And we should also point out that even though Israel is supporting and upholding the Palestinian Authority, Netanyahu has also been supporting Hamas with financial resources over the past few decades in order to prop them up. And I think it was Smotrich in 2005 who said that, 2015, who said that, Hamas is an asset and that Fatah or the PA might really.
Well, yes. So the idea here is that after Obama's administration succeeded in making some kind of negotiations between Mahmoud Abbas and Netanyahu, this was in 2014. After that, there was no political negotiations at all. And then a very big question was raised over the head of everybody in the world. So what's next? What should we do with the Palestinian Authority? What is the destiny of the occupied territories? What? So the only escape way was in front of Netanyahu is to preserve and reproduce the Palestinian division between Gaza. Okay. And this was the strategy Netanyahu and all the governments, of course. So it was not only Netanyahu, because Netanyahu's decisions are mainly based on the military and intelligence reports, okay, and consult with them, etc. So it is the state of Israel. The plan of the state of Israel was to preserve this dispute between Hamas and Fatah and between Gaza and the West Bank. And how to do that is to strengthen Hamas, to enable Hamas to get more money, okay, in order to preserve this political division between both sides. In this manner, Hamas was an asset because it prevents the Palestinian unity. And because we don't have Palestinian unity, so we don't have a party to talk to and to make negotiations with. So in this manner, Netanyahu and all the Israeli leaders repeatedly said, of course, we adhere to a Palestinian state that lives side by side by Israel, but now we don't have a partner. Look at the Palestinians, they have a division, they don't have unity, we should wait. But Israel, in fact, is fueling this division, okay? By Hamas, it can give some money, enables, the Qatarian suitcase that enters with money, with dollars to Hamas. And in Ramallah, with Fatah, Israel has much smoother connections and can convince them not to make this conciliation with Hamas. So in this manner, this was an asset. But now, after the breakout of the war, Israel is standing in front of difficult questions. Are the Palestinians going to unite again or not? If they are going to unite, is the issue of the Palestinian state going to raise again? How to deal with that? You should know that the situation in the West Bank, where there are now more than 500,000 settlers spread throughout the West Bank, this situation cannot be reversed by negotiation. This demands a war, frankly speaking. The position of the settlers and the religious Zionism within the Israeli society, and they succeeded to occupy the deep state inside Israel in a way that I can't believe or imagine a scenario where diplomatic efforts can convince Israel to withdraw from the West Bank. Okay? So we don't imagine a Palestinian state without a war. Unfortunately, okay? Because we talked about the new Israel that considers the West Bank as the authentic Eretz Israel.
Walid Habbas, it's been really great speaking to you. Your insights have been really interesting, and I appreciate all the time that you spent with me to discuss these issues. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching theAnalysis.news. If you'd like to give us a boost and support us, you can go to our website, theAnalysis.news, and hit the donate button. Make sure you get onto our mailing list as well, and see you next time.